Star vs. the Forces of Evil Season 3 wrapped 5 months ago, and with Season 4 not starting until 2019, I thought there's no better time to put up this list than in the middle of the dead months. The interesting thing about Season 3 for me is that a majority of the season is just okay. Don't get me wrong, there are some good episodes and there are some bad episodes, but a majority land right around the middle, mostly leaning towards good, and as always, this is my personal list. Feel free to disagree and leave your own in the comments below.
You think you won?
Ha! You don't make the plans, I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
Today, we pay thanks to the roots of our kingdom, to the stump, to the stump,
To the stump! Yes! To the stump! Woohoo!
Now I'm going to be kind of vague here, but this episode is really close to being one of my favorite Christmas episodes of all time in any show. I like Stump Day as a take on Christmas because while it has all the typical Christmas elements, it takes the idea of Santa and builds on it to its logical place where the stump is an all-powerful being. It sees all and it knows when you're bad and it tries to kill you. This episode is also helped by the fact that it has a fair amount of comedy going into it. I only have two real problems with the episode. The first is Star having an argument with her friends as per whether or not the stump is actually alive. This itself is not a problem and one of the better things about the episode, but no, the problem is they don't go all the way with it. I feel like they set up a really interesting and different message for a Christmas episode, but they don't go all the way with it. My other problem is a pet peeve that I don't like characters with birthdays on Christmas, but other than that, this is a really good holiday special.
You think you won?
Ha! You don't make the plans, I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
It's incredible. I had no idea this was here. No, no, no! Watch your step. You'll set off the alarm. I haven't seen these little guys in forever. Hello!
As I've said on several occasions, Moon Butterfly is one of my favorite characters in Star vs. the Forces of Evil. In some way, I like her more than Star, but that's a story for another day. And then we have Eclipsa, who we'd heard about several times before, but we really only saw her for the first time this season. As we spend more time with her, she's slowly also coming to be one of my favorite characters in the show, so putting two characters I love together in an episode immediately has me on board. And for the most part, this episode delivers. Moon and Eclipsa play off of each other really well. The episode has a more comedic focus, which allows it to shine better. It does have an air of intrigue going on for both the characters and as a viewer. It's not a perfect episode and it does have its slower moments, but overall the characters really do make it work for me.
You think you won?
Ha! You don't make the plans, I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
So, Jana, been a while since we've hung out one-on-one. We've never really
Chicken
had...
butt.
This is one of the only episodes in the season with Jana in it. Now, as I've said before, Jana is my favorite character in this show, and she was criminally underused in season 3. In this episode, however, she shines. Being part of the intro, I really hope we see more of her next season, but her appearance in this episode is pretty good, and she plays off of Marco really well. Star's side of the plot with her going to the realm of magic is interesting, but leaves something to be desired. The realm of magic has a good, if simplistic design, but the greater mystery and potential dark side makes it interesting in my opinion. But what's here is good, and it's a good episode. I'm not gonna complain.
You think you won?
Ha! You don't make the plans, I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
Buffrog!
Star Butterfly! Oh, my little sweet potato. It's been too long. Queen Moon!
A big theme of Star vs. the Forces of Evil is racism. The show tackles this by showing contrast between monsters and humans. The entire point of this episode is to address that theme, specifically within our starring characters. Throughout the entire show, we learn Star's perspective on this. So going into this episode, she's our grounding. Then we have Moon, who plays one side of the coin as the privileged, and on the other side we have Buffrog, another one of my favorite characters, who represents the side of the oppressed. episodes. A majority of this episode is spent with these two characters, with them playing a board game and talking about their differences. However, their actions show how similar they are, taking a big focus on what it's like to be a parent. Now, doing an episode like this could have been easily messed up, but the way they frame this episode around a board game makes it easier to digest, and while it does have its lesser moments, for a majority of the episode is able to pull off exactly what it needs to, and does it all in an engaging way.
You think you've won?
Ha! You don't make the plans. I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
Stay amazing, okay?
Hold on, fuck that.
So, I originally had Sophomore Slump at number 6, and I'm in the middle of editing it right now, and I realized I can't do that anymore. So here's the new number 6.
It's getting harder to end up on these adventures, pretending things aren't different.
Are they?
They are for me.
Oh. Like different?
Now, I don't actually have a script for this because, again, I'm making it up as I go, like I normally do. Looking at it again, I really do think Booth Buddies deserves the spot over Sophomore Slump. What makes Booth Buddies work is the fact that throughout the entire show, they've been building up the Starco ship, right? Star and Marco, right, are in love. A bunch of the fans are like that. I'm not one of them. I am very adamantly against their ship. And we've seen Marco's dated Jackie, and he's kind of hooking up with Kelly. At least that's where they're leading it right now. And Star has had Tom, and there's probably others. Right, eventually it's always, ever since Blood Moon Ball, it's always kind of just led for them two. But yet this one right here in this moment is like, no, we're not gonna do that. Instead, nope, they're gonna share the kiss like all the Starco fans have wanted, but the kiss is gonna be a bad thing. It's going to show that no, they're dating other people. Well, technically Marco isn't, but you get the point. They shouldn't kiss. They're not actually in love. It's addressing the ship. It's not completely throwing it out the window, even though I want them to. Let it die. Kill it if you have to. But we'll see. But it's addressing it and saying, no, we're not going to do this yet. We're going to take our time. We're going to actually expand on these real relationships. The ones that I hope the show actually goes into. But we'll see. And that's what makes Booth Buddies great, is how it handles a ship that's been building up, and it doesn't go one way or the other. It's very middle of the road. It doesn't agree with the Starco shippers, and it doesn't agree with me, someone who's against the ship. We'll just see where it goes from there.
You think you've won?
Ha! You don't make the plans. I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
He wanted nothing to do with your half-monster daughter, so we swapped her out with a peasant girl. We gave her the royal magic wand, and she became the next Queen of Munich.
A large portion of the third season has been building up to the trial of Eclipsa. So this was really important to get right. And for the most part, I think they did, even if it doesn't exactly go the way I expected. The idea of the High Magic Commission each getting to ask a question is something I'm inherently on board with, but they did a good job in using it to explain Eclipsa's backstory and other character elements. And then having Eclipsa get to ask her own question is a good way of resolving the plot that has been building for the past few episodes. But what really seals the episode for me is the fact that Star and Moon are in on it the whole time. The idea of these three working together against the Commission is a good reveal, and it just makes sense with the story up to this point. I also love Star's reaction to the fact that she's not related to Eclipsa and not technically royalty. It makes sense as per something the character would do, and it does a good job at foreshadowing what Star's going to do in future episodes.
You think you've won?
Ha! You don't make the plans. I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
Well, ain't this a pretty picture? First, Eclipsa wakes up, and now look who comes a-crying. Typical!
Wait, Eclipsa? What does she have to do with this?
Yeah, can someone fill us in?
Don't you ding-dongs know anything? She's her mama!
Eclipsa is Heinous' mother?
Like I said earlier, a big theme of this show is racism, and this episode is Star taking strides to fix the problem. She's decided to throw a party between monsters and humans with the hope of lessening the gap between the two. With that alone, I'm already on board with this episode, both because of how it handles racism, and I like episodes like this where you just put the characters we like in a partying setting and just let them go loose. But all of that has little to do with why a lot of people love this episode. No, what people love about this episode is Heinous. And here's where we finally get to learn what her deal is. We find out her name is actually Meteora and she's the daughter of Eclipsa. This reveal is done really well and they have been hinting at it since Heinous' first appearance. If I have a problem with this episode, it's Mina Loveberry. From a storytelling perspective, it makes sense for her to be here because she's the old timer set in her ways, not willing to get with the times. But from a character perspective, I just find her annoying and she really drags down the episode whenever she's on screen. But the majority of the episode is really good and handles everything really well, so I'm willing to look past that little flaw.
You think you've won?
Ha! You don't make the plans, I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
Cupcake Blast! Hyperion Atlas! Supersonic Blitz,
I'll start by saying this isn't both episodes in one slot. Not Divide and Conquer, just Conquer. While Divide is an okay episode, I feel like Conquer outshines it in almost every way and is overall more interesting. The big thing this episode has going for it is that it's the conclusion to several arcs we've been working on throughout the season. This episode focuses around Meteora, who has done really well and even works well as an intimidating force. The final fight scene with her is handled visually interesting and nicely paced. The reason is that Star can't actually beat her and uses all of her magic and still doesn't win. Then Eclipsa joins the picture and the way she fights in comparison to Star is contrasted really well. Also in comparison, she easily beats Meteora. But the scene doesn't feel anticlimactic because of everything that's led into it. Then there's the fact that for all intensive purposes, Eclipsa killed her own daughter, which carries a lot of emotion. And for her heroics and sacrifice, Eclipsa does get payoff in the fact that her daughter isn't dead. And it actually feels earned and well done. If the episode had just ended right here, this would have been top of the list, but it doesn't. Eclipsa then runs off and Glossaric reveals that her husband's name is Glubgor. You know, the stupid thing they've been saying all season. On top of that, for no adequate reason, the tone of the episode changes to act as if everything Eclipsa just did is a bad thing. Well, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen in the show, and this could go a variety of ways in the next season. At the moment, this finale scene is weird, cheap, and counterproductive to everything the show has been building towards. Even with the bad last minute, the overall episode is strong. I mean, it's number 3 on the list, so take it however you will.
You think you've won?
Ha! You don't make the plans, I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
Mommy, look! My cheeks are glowing! Isn't it pretty?
Do you know what would make you even prettier?
What, Mommy?
Suppressing your flaws.
Mommy, wait!
The main villain for a majority of season 3 is Meteora. This is the episode where we learn her backstory and basically how we got to where we are with her. What I like about Meteora's backstory is that we can see the tragedy of it. You can see how her upbringing shaped her, while also understanding her beliefs and why she does what she does. Because the other great thing about her backstory is that even though it's sad, it still justifies her as a villain. If anything, seeing the sadness of her backstory and learning that she's meant to be queen makes it even more tragic, and that's what justifies her rage and gives her the emotion for the rest of the season. The rest of the episode outside of that is fine. I like how they're developing Arm Princess and how she's basically becoming another Heinous. I hope they expand on this next season. I like the ending with Ponyhead getting her horns snapped off, and it does do a good job at showing off Meteora as a villain. My only real problem is Gemini, who I felt like they've been building towards something, but there's no payoff and he just kind of dies. And another problem is Rostakor, who kinda gets the same treatment, just with a breakup scene for some reason. But even with that, the episode as a whole does an amazing job at fleshing out a villain we've known of since the first season.
You think you've won?
Ha! You don't make the plans, I do. Me. Only I know how this all turns out.
I call the darkness unto me, from deepest depths of earth and sea. From ancient evils unawoken, break the one that can't be broken. To blackest night I pledge my soul and crush my heart to burning coal, to summon forth the deathly tower, to see my hated foe devoured. Ah!
Enough of this.
If you haven't noticed, a big thread that goes through this list has been Moon. Of all the episodes, she's in half of them because she's one of my favorites. So it would only make sense if my favorite episode is Moon the Undaunted. Now, I will admit I am inherently biased towards this episode, and not only because it's a Moon episode. I'm also a big sucker for flashback episodes, and this is a great flashback episode. The first 7 episodes of this season are all about Toffee, which this episode and Puddle Defenders are the only ones from this arc on the list. But this episode gives us the backstory and conflict between Moon and Toffee, which we've heard about in previous episodes but knew very little of. It also allows us to see where Moon started, so when we get back to the future or the present, you can logically see how we got to where we are. This episode also introduces Eclipsa, and it does a really good job at foreshadowing the rest of the season, more than any other episode in this first arc. On top of that, Eclipsa's appearance does a good job of setting the tone of the character and makes the viewer start to question what the show's told you about her and what we'll hear about her in future episodes. You also get to see the blooming relationship between Star's parents and Another great thing is how we see both the parallels and differences between Star and Moon. Other than that, the comedy is on point, the characters are interesting, and the overall story is engaging. And then there's the ending, with Moon actually hurting the immortal monsters. It's done well and holds all the tension and emotion needed to carry the scene, and the scene afterwards of Moon taking on her role as queen. What else can I say? It's my favorite episode in the season.